In this video, I will show you how to automate handwritten timesheet photos in construction business. We will be able to upload an image of a timesheet that the supervisor would have taken on his phone. He will upload this into the Google Drive, and then our automation will kick in. It will read this image, create a proper timesheet. Now let's see the demo first before we go into how this automation actually works. For us to do that, we will go into the Google Drive. So inside the Google Drive, now I will upload the image that the supervisor would have taken. I've created an image in my laptop. So I will say go to File, Upload. I've taken an image from my phone of a timesheet that is created on a paper. I'm going to click on Upload. We'll wait for the image to get uploaded. Now you can see the timesheet is uploaded here. I'll just double click here to show you. So you can see it has a date, it has the name of the supervisor, it has a job ID, and then each employee's name, what times they started, and then what times they left the shop. Okay. Now we'll come inside our automation, and now I will kickstart this automation. Just before I kickstart this automation, I want to show you, this is our end goal. This is the timesheet that will record all the timestamps of every single image that the supervisor will be uploading. So right now you can see this is empty. Now we come inside our automation. I'll click on execute workflow. Okay, we can see the workflow is executed successfully. So now we will go inside our timesheet and we can see that the timesheet from the image actually has been recorded appropriately. The date has gone inside the date column. The name of the supervisor is in the supervisor column, job ID, employee names, start time, end times, and then the hours. Now let's go back inside our automation to see how the automation was actually built. We'll start from the front, and to give you a high level, what's happening here is the supervisor basically uploaded the image into a Google Drive, which was this section here. So in this section, we basically saying every minute you're going to read the Google Drive, which is where I am storing that image that the supervisor uploads. So in our case, you can see what I'm doing here is I'm looking at this folder called unprocessed folder, and I'm saying anytime a file is created, look at this unprocessed folder and then grab that file. So let me show you what that folder looks like. So what I've done is I've created a new folder in my Google Drive called it Timesheet Automation. Inside this, I've created two folders. One is the unprocessed folder, which is where the supervisor will add the image. And the second folder is the processed folder. And what this is at the end of the automation, once the timesheet image has been processed, that image will then be dropped into this processed folder, showing that this image was actually worked on for like an evidence. And then this construction timesheet that you're seeing here, this Google spreadsheet, is this one that I was showing you where we are actually capturing the details from the image. So coming back, this unprocessed is actually this unprocessed folder. So we'll go to the next component in this automation. So what the next component is saying is once you have reached inside that unprocessed folder and you have found out the file, you need to download the file from the Google folder for the automation to be able to read it. So for that reason, we use the download operation on the Google Drive account. And then we basically, what we are saying is in the previous node, the file that we got, I'll show you. This ID. This is the ID of the file that we found out that was dropped as an image by the supervisor. Basically take this ID and drop it in here, and this is how the automation knows which file I need to download. So, and you can see on the right hand side, this is the output. So the output is that the automation has now downloaded that file. Now that the file has been downloaded, our next step actually has to be to read that image. For us to read that image, what we have done is we have made use of the Google Cloud API. So Google has a Cloud Vision API that basically is an OCR. It reads the images. So if I go inside the OCR, you can see this OCR, basically we need a post method. Basically, I need to ping the API of the Google Cloud Vision, and inside I need to provide some parameters. So I'm going to click on the send query parameters. I'm going to provide the key query, and what this key query is, the value is going to be the API key that you will generate. On the bottom, you can see you need to click on the send body. The body content type is going to be JSON. The body is obviously using JSON, and then inside here I need to provide an input to the OCR telling it what is it exactly that I want this Cloud Vision API to do. So if I will expand it, you can see what I've done here is I'm basically telling the API that the content that you are going to work on is this JSON.data. JSON.data is nothing but the image file that I'm grabbing, and inside the feature you are seeing type document text detection. This basically tells the API that I want you to read the image and grab all the text from that image. Now, one of the things here is the OCR, or the Google Cloud API, is expecting the data in a specific format. It is not going to take the image directly. It's basically expecting a base 64 string. So for that purpose, we have introduced a node in between the download file and the OCR. And this is nothing but it takes the file and then it converts it into a base 64 string. And that base 64 string is then what we pass on to our OCR. Now, one other thing you may ask is, how do I get this OCR? In order to get this OCR, you need to log in into Google Console. Once you go inside Google Console, then you will go in and say, enable the Cloud Vision API. Once you enable the Cloud Vision API, there is an option there for you to create credentials. That's where you will be able to create an API key and then plug it inside the OCR that I just showed you. So now that you have the OCR done, the next step is the OCR basically extracted all the text from the image. And now that the text has been extracted, you want it to be extracted from this OCR and stored in some place using an LLM. So that's where you're seeing this AI information collector. This AI information collector uses OpenAI chat model, and what it essentially is doing is it's saying, give me all the data that you got. So if you go to the bottom, this, by the way, on the left hand side is all the data that came from the OCR, and it is saying, give me all this data that you got, that you converted as text from the image, and then I'm gonna work on this and extract the relevant pieces of information. So we pass this text onto the input parameter, and then here you can see in the input schema we have defined what is it that we want this LLM to look at. So if I expand this, you can see I'm basically telling the LLM I am interested in a date. This is the date the timesheet was being recorded. I'm interested in knowing the supervisor name who was in charge of that timesheet. And I want you to tell me what is the job ID, what is the employee name, the start time and end time of every single employee. So you can see on the right hand side, the output of this LLM is a very structured output. It's giving you the date, the supervisor name, the employee name, the job ID, start time and end time, and so on. Compare the input versus how the output looks. Okay, on to the next. So now that we have this information into our LLM, the next step would have been to record that information into our Google spreadsheet. But the challenge that we face there is, if I can go back here again, if you look at the output, the way this output is coming in, this is the date of the timesheet, and then there is the supervisor name, and then there is a third field called jobs field. And then inside this third field, then you have one row per employee. The problem that we have is Google Sheet is going to take one row per record, and each employee should have a record for the supervisor on that day. So Robert needs to be inside every single row, which it is not here. You can see Robert is at the parent level, the date is at the parent level, whereas we have a separate array that contains the employees. And this is going to cause a problem in us feeding this data into the spreadsheet. We need a way where we can reorganize this data so that one row will have the date, the supervisor name, the job ID, employee name, start date, and end time. For us to be able to do that, we have made use of some JavaScript code. And this is where we do that. So if I expand this out, the majority of the reason why we are doing this, to flatten out basically the array and create one row per record, that is being done here. So you can see inside of this function here, I am saying spit out one row, and for each row, give me the date, give me the name of the supervisor, give me the job ID, employee name, start time, end time. Now hours is a new variable that I've introduced in this code, and I'm basically saying just do a subtraction between the end time and the start time and give me the number of hours that you can find out. For the rest of the piece of the code, very quickly, if you look, what we have done is we're basically capturing the date, we're capturing the supervisor raw. So supervisor raw is nothing but it's saying look at the supervisor name record, and if you don't find a name in the image, then tell me you found nothing. But if you found something that is in all caps, basically convert them into a lowercase. And then for instances where the supervisor name is a two-word name, let's say Robert Smith, then look at both the words Robert and Smith and make the R capitalize in Robert and make the S capitalize in Smith. So that's what this function is doing. And then here in the past time to minutes, basically taking the start time, end time, and converting into minutes so we can process it better. The output of this code is then being fed into our spreadsheet, which is where we are going to record this information. So you can see here, inside of this node, I'm going to select one is append row. Append row is the operation, which means every time I run this operation, it's going to go to the next row of the Google spreadsheet. It is not going to override the previous timesheet that was recorded earlier. In the document drop down, you're going to select by ID, and this is where you want to put in the ID of the spreadsheet. How do you find the ID of the spreadsheet? You got to go into your spreadsheet. You're going to go in this URL bar, and in here you can see after this D17J00, all this is your ID. So you can see this is your ID that I've pasted in. And then here you got to select from list. Sheet 1 will automatically populate. Once this populates, then these are the column names that come up of what you have defined in your spreadsheet. So if I go into my spreadsheet, you can see I have date, supervisor, job ID, employee, start, and hours. Coming back, you can see the same thing, date, supervisor, job ID, employee, and so on. And then what I do is inside each of these variables, I'm going to take a look at the left hand side, which is my code block, and then I'm going to drag each of these values in. Once I drag it in, that's how the data is being populated from my code into my automation. Basically, it's adding in rows to my Google Sheet. So now that the rows have been added to my Google Sheet, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to my Google Drive and say that this image that was uploaded, I have been successful in processing this image. So I need to take this image from the unprocessed folder and push it to the processed folder. The way I do that is I create another Google Drive node. In this Google Drive node, we will do a move operation, and then we have to define the ID of the file. The ID of the file is, you're going to come to the download file here, and should have the ID somewhere here. Here, this is the ID. So you just drag this ID and push it here. So it will know now which file you need to mark as processed. The parent drive is going to be always my drive, your Google Drive. In the parent folder, you will select the processed folder. So if I go to my Google Drive, this processed folder is what you're going to select inside here. You're basically saying, take the file that was inside this unprocessed folder that I grabbed the data from, and now push that file or move that file into this processed folder. So that's what you're doing here. Now we are at the last step of our workflow, which basically says when you take a picture from your phone of anything, whether it's a timesheet or anything, usually the numbering of that image is random. It says something like IMG 356 or some sort of a number that doesn't mean anything to the user. So for that reason, what we're going to do is we're going to take that file and then rename it in such a way that when you see that image, you will be able to identify what it actually means. So how we do that is we get another Google Drive node. In here, we say we want to do an update operation. We're going to provide the ID of the file that we want to do this on in the similar way that we just did a few seconds ago. And there we will say in this new updated file name, we're going to provide timesheet is just a static keyword that I put in here. And then I said, give me the date. So if you look at this, so in the AI information extractor, if you look at the output, one of the outputs here was the date. This was the date the timesheet was, this was the date when the timesheet was done. So I basically said, just call this file as timesheet and then give me the date of that timesheet. So that's what I've dragged from here to here so that the file will read timesheet and then date. And on the right hand side, you can see the output. This is how it actually reads. It reads timesheet and then the date March 1, 2026. And that's our automation. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you watched it till the end, I would appreciate if you like the video, leave a comment and subscribe my channel. That will help YouTube push this video out to more people.